I thought the hardest part of earning my degree would be the sleepless nights or the tuition bills I scraped together dollar by dollar. I was wrong. The hardest part was waking up in a hospital bed, waiting for the parents I had spent a lifetime trying to please. The doctors had called them hours ago. But the chair beside me was empty until my grandfather walked in, holding the ugly truth I was not ready to hear. The coffee in my travel mug was 4 hours cold, and it tasted like burnt copper. I sat in the breakdown room at Brightline Compliance Group, the fluorescent lights humming that aggressive, low-frequency buzz that seemed to vibrate right behind my eyes. It was 7 in the evening on a Tuesday. Most of the junior associates had already clocked out to go to happy hour or the gym. But I was still there, staring at a spreadsheet that refused to balance. I was 34 years old. I was too old to be an undergraduate intern, and I was definitely too old to be terrified of a graduation ceremony. Ariana, focus, I told myself. I rubbed my temples. Just 2 more hours of data entry. Then I could drive to the library at Port Mason State and finish the final revisions on my capstone project. This was the deal I had made with myself. No loans I could not service, no asking for help, no relying on the people who had taught me that reliance was a weakness. I had spent the last 6 years clawing my way back to academia after a decade of false starts and quiet failures. I was exhausted in a way that sleep could not touch. It was a bone-deep weariness, the kind that settles in the marrow and makes your hands shake when you try to hold a pen. My phone buzzed on the laminate table. I glanced at the screen. A notification from social media popped up. Elaine Stewart commented on your post. So proud of our girl. Finally crossing the finish line, I stared at the words. The exclamation points felt like tiny insults. I had posted a picture of my cap and gown earlier that morning, a moment of weakness where I wanted to share the tangible proof that I was actually doing this. My mother, Elaine, had not called me in 3 weeks. The last time we spoke, she had cut the conversation short because she had a landscaping consultation. But here she was, performing Pride for an audience of her friends and distant cousins. I tapped the phone screen to call her. I did not know why I did it. Maybe I just wanted to hear her say it to me, to make the digital comment real. The line rang. Once, twice, 3 times. It went to voicemail. Hi, you have reached Elaine and Martin. We are busy living life. Leave a message. I hung up without speaking. It was a familiar ritual. I was the ghost in their machine. The daughter they acknowledged when it reflected well on them, but ignored when I needed to be a person. They were polite, always. If I saw them, they would hug me stiffly and ask about the weather. But there was a distance between us that felt less like a gap and more like a canyon. They lived in a world of manicured lawns and appearances. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with a radiator that clanked and a pile of textbooks that cost more than my car. I put the phone down and went back to the spreadsheet. I could not afford to be irrational. That was what Martin, my father, would say. You are being irrational. Ariana, we are busy people. We support you in our own way. I forced the numbers to line up. I finished the report. I packed my bag, slinging the heavy strap over my shoulder, and walked out into the cool night air. The drive to campus was a blur of red taillights and radio static. I kept thinking about the graduation ceremony on Saturday. It was the finish line. Once I walked across that stage, I would have the degree. I would have the credential to get a promotion at Brightline, or maybe leave entirely. I would be solvent. I would be safe. I parked in the far lot, the one where the lights flickered, because I did not have the $60 for a semester parking pass in the garage. As I walked toward the library, my phone buzzed again. I stopped under a street lamp. It was a text, but not from my parents. Grandpa Hal. Saw the weather says rain for Saturday. Do you have a good umbrella I can bring the big golf one? Let me know. Love, Grandpa. I smiled, and the tightness in my chest loosened just a fraction. Harold Stewart was everything my parents were not. He was steady. He was present. He was the kind of man who remembered that I hated cilantro and that I worried about thunder. He lived in a small house in Cedar Hollow, about 40 minutes away, and for the last 6 months, he had been my shadow support system. He left voicemails just to say hello. He mailed me grocery store gift cards that I kept trying to return, and he kept mailing them back with notes that said, "Buy the good cheese." I texted him back, "I have a hood. Grandpa, I will be okay. Don't worry about the umbrella." He replied instantly, "I am bringing it. See you there." I put the phone away, feeling a sudden, sharp guilt. I had not gone to see him in 2 weeks because of finals. I owed him a visit. I owed him a lot more than that. When I was drowning in the initial shame of going back to school at 28, feeling like a failure compared to my cousins who were already lawyers and doctors, Grandpa Hal was the one who told me that time was a construct and that I should just keep walking. I entered the library and found my usual corner. I opened my laptop, ready to work, but something caught my eye on the browser tab I had left open. It was my student account portal. I had logged in earlier to check my graduation status, ensuring all the fees were paid. But now, looking closer at the ledger, something seemed wrong. There was a line item from 3 months ago. Refund disbursement, $2,400. I frowned. I had never received a refund. I had taken out the maximum federal loans allowed to cover the tuition spike, and I had calculated it down to the penny. There should not have been a refund, and if there was, I certainly had not seen the money. I clicked on the details. The status said processed. I pulled out my planner where I tracked every single financial transaction. There was no record of a deposit. I checked my bank app. Nothing. $2,400 was a life-changing amount of money for me right now. That was 3 months of rent. That was car repairs. I felt a cold prickle on the back of my neck. I opened a new tab and logged into my credit monitoring service, the free one I had signed up for years ago and rarely checked. There was a red alert icon in the corner. New inquiry, Pinegate Community Credit Union. I did not bank with Pinegate. I had never even been to Pinegate. I clicked further. There was a hard credit pull from 6 weeks ago, and another notification, older, about a change of address. My heart did up a strange, fluttering skip. It felt like a bird was trapped in my ribcage, thrashing against the bone. I took a deep breath, trying to slow it down. Stress. I told myself, this is just stress. I looked at the address listed on the change notification. It was for an apartment complex in a town called Oakhaven. I had lived in Oakhaven for 6 months when I was 22. A decade ago. Why would mail be going there now? I rubbed my eyes. The library lights seemed too bright, haloing at the edges. I was exhausted. That had to be it. I was misreading the screen. Maybe the refund was a glitch. Maybe the credit inquiry was a mistake. Names got mixed up all the time. I closed the laptop. I could not deal with this tonight. If I went down the rabbit hole of calling customer service lines, I would not finish my paper. If I did not finish my paper, I would not graduate. Focus on the degree. I thought, fix the rest later. I packed up my bag again. My hands were trembling slightly. I told myself it was just too much caffeine and not enough food. I walked back to my car, the dark pavement moving beneath my feet like the deck of a ship. Saturday arrived with a humidity that made the air feel like wet wool. The Port Mason State Arena was a cavernous, echoing beast of a building, filled with 4,000 students and their families. The noise was deafening, a roar of chatter, laughter, and the screech of feedback from the microphone system. I stood in line with the College of Business, wearing a black polyester gown that trapped my body heat. I was sweating, but my skin felt cold and clammy. "Stuart, Ariana," the marshal whispered, checking my name off the card. "You're in the 3rd row, seat 12. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded thin, like it was coming from someone else. I found my seat and sat down. The folding chair was hard metal. I looked up at the stands. It was a sea of faces, a blur of humanity. I tried to find my parents. They had said they would be there. Elaine had texted me that morning, "We are sitting in section 204. Look for us." I scanned section 204. It was too far away to distinguish features. I saw a lot of people holding phones up. I imagined my mother and father there, looking perfect, looking appropriate. I imagined them telling the people next to them, "That is our daughter. She took the scenic route, but she made it." Then I looked for Grandpa Hal. He had said he would be near the ADA section on the lower level because of his knees. I squinted, trying to find his gray flat cap, the one he always wore for nice occasions. I could not see him. The lights in the arena were doing that thing again, buzzing. A high-pitched whine that drilled into my ears. The ceremony began. The dean started speaking about the future, about resilience, about the doors opening for us. I tried to listen, but the words were swimming. My chest felt tight, not the butterfly tightness of nervousness, but a physical squeezing, as if a belt were being cinched around my lungs. I took a sip from the water bottle I had snuck in under my gown. The water was warm and metallic. Push through, I commanded myself. You have worked too hard to faint now. Do not be dramatic. Do not make a scene. That was the Stewart family motto, unwritten but carved into my psyche. Do not make a scene. The speeches dragged on. 30 minutes. 45. My heart was doing something frightening. It was racing, then pausing, then thumping hard enough to shake my whole body. Thump, thump, pause. Thump. And now, the candidates for the Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. The voice boomed. We were told to stand. I stood up. The world tilted. The floor seemed to rush up toward me, then drop away. The back of the student in front of me, a tall guy with Class of 2024, taped to his cap, swayed like a tree in a storm. I grabbed the back of his chair to steady myself. The buzzing in my ears became a roar. It sounded like the ocean. I am going to fall. I thought with sudden clarity, I am going to fall, and everyone is going to see. I tried to sit back down, but my legs were not receiving signals from my brain anymore. The tunnel vision set in black creeping in from the edges of my sight, narrowing the world down to a single pinprick of harsh white light. Miss, are you okay? Someone whispered next to me. I tried to say, I'm fine, just a little dizzy, but my tongue felt heavy and numb. The last thing I felt was the lack of resistance as my knees buckled. I hit the concrete floor hard. The impact jarred my shoulder, but the pain felt distant, like it was happening to a character in a movie I was watching. There were gasps. The applause faltered. Medic, we need a medic here. I opened my eyes for a second. The arena ceiling was spinning. Faces were leaning over me, distorted and terrified. A graduation cap had fallen off someone's head and landed on my chest. Can you hear me? A man in a uniform was kneeling beside me. He had a kind face, but he looked worried. What's your name? Ariana, I mumbled. The word was sludge. Ariana, do you have any conditions? Are you diabetic? No, I whispered. Who should we call? Who is here for you? My parents, I said. It was instinct. It was the answer a child gives. Elaine and Martin. Okay, we're going to get you out of here. Stay with me. But I could not stay. The darkness washed over me, cool and absolute, and the sound of 4,000 people holding their breath faded into silence. Waking up was not like in the movies. There was no sudden gasp, no snapping open of eyes. It was a slow, confused climb out of a deep well. I was aware of the smell first, antiseptic and stale coffee, then the sound, the rhythmic beeping of a monitor. Beep, beep, beep. I opened my eyes. The light was dim. I was in a hospital room. I was wearing a thin gown with blue geometric patterns. There was an IV line taped to the back of my left hand. My chest ached, a dull, bruised feeling. I turned my head. A nurse was adjusting something on a computer stand near the foot of the bed. She looked up and saw me blinking. Welcome back. Ms. Stewart, she said softly. She checked the monitor. How are you feeling? Thirsty, I rasped. She poured a cup of water from a plastic pitcher and brought it to me, holding the straw to my lips. I drank greedily. Where am I? St. Bridget Medical Center. You took a bit of a tumble at the university. Your blood pressure bottomed out and you had some arrhythmia. Memory crashed back into me. The graduation, the collapse. Oh God, I groaned, covering my face with my free hand. Did I ruin the ceremony? You had a medical emergency, the nurse said firmly. You didn't ruin anything. You needed help. I pulled my hand away. My parents. Did they come? I told the paramedic. The nurse's expression shifted. It was a subtle micro-expression, a tightening of the lips, a flicker of pity that I knew all too well. We called the contacts on your file, she said diplomatically. Elaine and Martin Stewart. Yes. We called them when you were admitted. That was about 4 hours ago. 4 hours? I had been out for 4 hours. Are they here? I asked, looking toward the door. The hallway was visible through the glass panel. It was empty. We couldn't get through initially, the nurse said, avoiding my eyes now. We left a voicemail marked urgent, and we tried again an hour ago. There hasn't been a response yet. I stared at the ceiling tiles. They were speckled with gray dots. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4. They hadn't answered. Maybe they're still at the graduation, I said, my voice sounding desperate even to my own ears. Maybe they couldn't hear the phone in the arena. It was really loud. Maybe, the nurse said. She checked my IV bag. Why don't you rest for a bit? The doctor will be in shortly to explain the tests we need to run. She left the room. I lay there in the silence, feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I refused to let them fall. I was 34. I was a graduate. I was an adult. Adults did not cry because their parents didn't show up. But the logic didn't stop the hurt. It was a physical pain, sharper than the ache in my chest. They were supposed to be there. They had posted about it. They had told the world they were proud. And when I fell, when I broke, they were nowhere. I closed my eyes and drifted in a half-sleep, listening to the hallway sounds, carts rolling, pages over the intercom. Time stretched. The light outside the window shifted from afternoon gray to evening purple. Then I heard a voice. It was coming from the nurse's station down the hall. It was not loud, but it carried. It was a male voice, low and gravelly. It wasn't shouting. It was the specific tone of a man who is terrified but holding it together with sheer will. I don't care what the computer says about the order of contact, the voice said. I am her grandfather. I am telling you. The parents aren't here. I am here. My heart hammered. Grandpa. Sir, I understand. But unless you're listed as next of kin or have power of attorney, a nurse replied. I have her insurance card from when she was 12, the voice insisted, trembling slightly. I have a letter she sent me last week. I am Harold Stewart. She is my granddaughter. Just tell me she is alive. Please. Grandpa, I called out. My voice was weak, but I tried to project it. There was a pause in the hallway conversation. Then, heavy, hurried footsteps, the door to my room pushed open. Grandpa Hal stood there. He was wearing his good suit, the charcoal one he wore to funerals and weddings. He was holding his rain-soaked flat cap in one hand, in the other. He clutched a worn brown envelope and a faded blue card. His face was pale, his eyes wide behind his wire-rimmed glasses. When he saw me, the tension drained out of him so fast he almost sagged against the door frame. Ariana, he breathed. He walked to the bed, his steps uneven. He put the hat and the envelope on the side table and reached for my hand. His skin was rough and cool, shaking slightly. I'm okay, Grandpa, I said quickly. I fainted. It's stupid. He didn't scold me. He didn't ask what happened. He just squeezed my hand, anchoring me to the mattress, anchoring me to the world. I was in the stands, he said, his voice thick. I saw you go down. I tried to get down to the floor, but security, they wouldn't let anyone through. They said the ambulance took you here. I'm sorry, I said. I ruined your day. Stop it, he said sharply. Don't you ever say that. He pulled the plastic chair close to the bed and sat down. He looked older than I had ever seen him. The lines around his mouth were deep grooves of worry. Did you see Mom and Dad? I asked. I had to ask. I had to know for sure. Did they follow the ambulance? Grandpa Hal looked at me. He took a deep breath, and for a second, he looked angry not at me, but at something else. Then his face softened into a profound, heartbreaking sadness. "No, sweetheart," he said quietly. "Maybe they're in the waiting room." I said, "Maybe they're stuck in traffic." Grandpa Hal shook his head slowly. "I checked the waiting room, Ariana. I checked the parking lot. I called Martin's cell phone 3 times from the lobby." He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. He needed me to understand something, and he hated that he had to be the one to do it. "They didn't come, Ariana." The words hung in the air like smoke. "They didn't come." "But they were at the ceremony," I argued weakly. "Elaine texted me." "I don't know where they were," Grandpa said. "But when you fell, when they called your name over the loudspeaker for family, nobody stood up, just me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. He dabbed at his forehead. "I drove here as fast as I could," he said. "I thought surely they beat me here, but the nurse said you've been alone for hours." The reality of it finally hit me. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a dead battery. It wasn't traffic. I had collapsed in front of thousands of people. I was in a hospital bed with wires taped to my chest. And my parents, the people who claimed me on Facebook, the people who used my achievements as social currency, could not be bothered to answer the phone. I looked at my grandfather. He was 82 years old. He had bad knees and a cataract in his left eye. He had driven 40 minutes in the rain, fought with security, and argued with nurses, just to hold my hand. "You're not alone," he said, reading my mind. He covered my hand with both of his. "I know it feels like it right now, but you are not alone." I tried to laugh. I tried to make a joke about how dramatic this all was, how I was just looking for attention. I opened my mouth to say, well, at least I got out of the boring speeches. But the laugh didn't come. Instead, a sob ripped its way out of my throat. It was ugly and jagged. I crumpled. I turned my face into the scratchy hospital pillow and cried. I cried for the graduation I didn't get to finish. I cried for the exhaustion of the last 6 years. But mostly, I cried because the illusion I had been protecting for so long, the illusion that my parents loved me, that they were just busy, had finally shattered. Grandpa Hal didn't say anything else. He didn't offer platitudes. He just sat there, his steady hand on my arm, guarding the door while I fell apart, after the tears subsided, leaving me hollowed out and exhausted. The room felt quieter. The nurse came back in to check my vitals. She smiled at Grandpa. "We're going to keep her overnight for observation," she said. "Doctor, Evans wants to run a cardiac panel in the morning, just to be safe." "I'm staying," Grandpa said. It wasn't a question. "Visiting hours end at 9, but..." The nurse looked at me, then back at him. "We can bring in a recliner." "Thank you," Grandpa said. When she left, Grandpa reached for the worn envelope he had placed on the table earlier. He held it for a moment, his thumb rubbing over the paper. It looked like junk mail, the kind of stuff that gets shoved in a mailbox and forgotten. "What's that?" I asked, wiping my eyes with the sheet. He hesitated. "I wasn't going to show you this today. Not on your graduation day, but..." He looked at the door where the nurse had exited, then at the empty space where my parents should have been. "I think maybe you need to see it." He handed it to me. It was addressed to me, Ariana Stewart, but the address was Grandpa's house in Cedar Hollow. "It came yesterday," he said. "It's a collection notice." I frowned, taking the envelope. My fingers felt numb. "A collection notice for what?" "For a credit card," Grandpa said softly. "A credit card you opened 3 years ago." "I don't have a credit card," I said. "I only have a debit card. I cut up my credit cards when I went back to school." "I know," Grandpa said. "That's why I kept it." I pulled the letter out. It was from a debt collector. Outstanding balance, $4,200. Account ending in 8890. I stared at the numbers. The buzzing in my ears started again, low and ominous. "I didn't open this," I whispered. "I know," Grandpa repeated. "Ariana, there have been other letters, sent to my house by mistake. I think, Or maybe because I'm listed as a previous address for you. I've been saving them." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out another piece of paper. It was a folded printout. "And this," he said. "I went to the bank this morning before the ceremony. I wanted to give you a check for graduation. The teller told me she couldn't deposit it into your savings account because the account was closed." Closed. I sat up straighter, ignoring the pull of the IV. "I didn't close it. That's my emergency fund." "It was closed last week," Grandpa said. "Transferred out." I felt sick. Physically. Violently sick. The refund that never arrived. The credit inquiry from Pinegate. The collection notice. The closed account. "Who?" I asked, though a cold, heavy stone was already forming in my stomach. Grandpa Hal looked at me with infinite sorrow. He didn't want to say it. He didn't want to break my heart any more than it was already broken. "The teller said the transfer was authorized by the joint account holder," Grandpa said. "I don't have a joint." I trailed off. When I was 18, before I moved out, before I started my first attempt at college. My mother had opened a savings account with me, for convenience. She had said, in case of emergencies. I had forgotten she was on it. I had used that account for 16 years. It was where I put my tips from waitressing. It was where I put my financial aid overages. "Elaine," I whispered. Grandpa nodded slowly. "Elaine." I looked at the collection notice in my hand. Then I looked at the empty doorway. The silence in the room changed. It wasn't just the absence of my parents anymore. It was the presence of something else, something darker. They hadn't come to the hospital, not because they were busy, not because they were bad with phones. They hadn't come because they knew I was going to find out. "They took it," I said, my voice trembling. "They took my money." "It looks that way," Grandpa said. I leaned back against the pillows. The exhaustion was still there, but now it was mixed with a cold, sharp clarity. I thought about the text message, "We're busy living life." I thought about the Facebook comments so proud. They were stripping me for parts. My identity, my credit, my savings, all while smiling for the camera. Grandpa Hal took the letter from my shaking hands and put it back in the folder. "We're going to fix it," he said firmly. "But first, you rest. You get your heart right. The rest we deal with tomorrow." He moved the recliner next to my bed and sat down. Taking up his post, he looked small in the chair. But to me, he looked like a fortress. "Go to sleep, Ariana," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." I closed my eyes. The tears were gone. In their place, a small, hard knot of anger began to tighten in the center of my chest. It was the only thing keeping my heart beating steady. I drifted off to the sound of my grandfather's breathing, knowing that when I woke up, the world would be different. The daughter who begged for scraps of affection was gone. She had died on the floor of the Port Mason Arena. Tomorrow, someone else would wake up in her place. The morning sun hit the hospital blinds with a harsh, uncompromising brightness that made my head throb. I had spent the night drifting in and out of a shallow, restless sleep, interrupted by the hiss of the blood pressure cuff inflating around my arm every hour. "Doctor." Evans stood at the foot of my bed, reviewing a tablet with the kind of neutral, professional expression that always made me nervous. He was young, maybe only a few years older than me, but he carried the weight of authority that I felt I was constantly chasing and failing to catch. "So," he began, looking up at me, "we have the results of your cardiac panel." I sat up, wincing as the movement pulled at the IV line still taped to my hand. "It was just stress, right?" I asked quickly. "I didn't eat enough yesterday. The gown was hot. It was just a faint." I was already constructing the narrative. If it was just dehydration, I could be discharged. If I was discharged, I could go home, sleep for 12 hours, and pretend the last 24 hours had never happened. I could pretend my parents were just running late. I could pretend my bank account wasn't empty. It was partly exhaustion and dehydration. "Yes, doctor," Evans said, his voice measured. "Your electrolytes were non-existent, but the collapse was triggered by a significant arrhythmia." You have an irregularity in your heart rhythm. It is likely something you have had for a while, but the extreme stress exacerbated it. I am fine, I said, the reflex automatic. I just need sleep. Ariana. Doctor. Evans said, stepping closer. Your heart rate was nearly 200 beats per minute when the paramedics got to you. You didn't just faint. Your system crashed. We need to schedule a follow-up with a cardiologist for a Holter monitor and potentially an echocardiogram. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. It was embarrassment, deep, burning shame. I was 34 years old, and I couldn't even handle a graduation ceremony without my body shutting down. It felt like a moral failing, weakness. My father's voice whispered in my head, "You were always too sensitive." "I can't afford a cardiologist," I muttered. Looking at my hands, "I don't have time for this. I have to go back to work on Monday." "You are not going to work on Monday," a voice said from the corner. I turned. Grandpa Hal was standing there. He looked rumpled, having spent the night in the vinyl recliner that St. Brigid Medical Center apologetically called a guest bed. His white dress shirt was wrinkled, and he had discarded his tie, but his eyes were clear and sharp. "Grandpa, I have to," I argued. "I can't lose my job." "You can lose a job," Grandpa said, walking over to stand beside the doctor. "You cannot lose your heart." He turned to Dr. Evans. "We want the full discharge plan, written out, and I want a patient advocate assigned to her case to help navigate the insurance." I stared at him. Grandpa Hal was usually a man of few words, content to sit on his porch and listen to baseball games on the radio. I had never seen him command a room like this. "Of course, Doctor," Evans said, nodding respectfully. "I can have the social worker stop by." "Good," Grandpa said. "And one more thing. We need to update her emergency contact forms immediately, before she is discharged." "Grandpa, it's fine," I hissed, humiliated that we were having this conversation in front of the doctor. "My parents are listed. It's fine." "It is not fine," Grandpa said. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't even raising his voice. He was just stating a fact, like he was commenting on the weather. They didn't answer the phone. "Ariana, if the doctor needed consent for a procedure last night, he couldn't get it. That is dangerous." He looked at me, and his expression softened, but his resolve didn't crack. "You need someone who picks up the phone." The truth of it settled in my stomach like a heavy stone. He was right. If I had died on that floor yesterday, the hospital would have been leaving voicemails while my parents were busy living life. "Okay," I whispered. The nurse brought the clipboard 10 minutes later. My hand shook as I held the pen. I drew a single line through Elaine Stewart and Martin Stewart. Under primary emergency contact, I wrote Harold Stewart. It felt like a betrayal. It felt like I was the one doing something wrong, cutting them out. But as I signed my name at the bottom, I felt a strange, terrifying sense of relief. My phone rang at 11 in the morning. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, eating dry hospital toast and trying not to think about the collection notice Grandpa had shown me the night before. I looked at the screen. Mom. My heart leaped into my throat. The conditioning was so deep, so ingrained, that even after everything, a part of me thought, she's calling to apologize. She's calling to say they were stuck in a dead zone. She's calling to say she loves me. I picked up. "Hello. Ariana." Elaine's voice came through, crisp and bright. "Good Lord, finally, I have been trying to get information out of that hospital for 20 minutes, but they are being incredibly difficult about privacy laws." There was no, "Are you okay?" There was no, I was so worried. "I'm okay, Mom," I said, my voice sounding small. "I'm still at St. Brigid's." "Well, obviously," she said. "Listen, I saw the video. Someone posted a clip of the ceremony on the university page. You can see the commotion in the third row. It looks very dramatic." I gripped the phone tighter. I collapsed. "Mom, my heart stopped beating right." "I know. I know, she said dismissively. You always did get worked up over big events. Remember your third-grade recital? Same thing. I closed my eyes. I didn't remember fainting at my recital. I remembered her telling me I looked chubby in my leotard. But I didn't remember fainting. The reason I'm calling, Elaine continued, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper, is that your father and I are worried about the optics. Are you planning to sue the university? Because if you are, we need to get ahead of it. It could look bad if we don't control the narrative. We don't want people thinking you're unstable. I sat there, stunned into silence. I was sitting in a hospital gown, with electrodes stuck to my chest, holding a piece of toast that tasted like sawdust, and my mother was talking about me like I was a damaged appliance that voided its warranty. Optics, I repeated. Mom, nobody came. You guys didn't come. Oh, stop it, she snapped. We were there. We were in the stands, but the traffic getting out was a nightmare. And then Martin had a conference call he absolutely could not miss. We assumed you were just dehydrated. You're young. Ariana, you bounce back. I was in the emergency room, I said. Grandpa came. There was a pause on the other end. A cold, sharp silence. Hal is there, she asked. Her tone changed instantly. It wasn't annoyance anymore. It was suspicion. Why is Hal there? Because he answered the phone, I said. Well, Elaine said, her voice tight. Don't let him fill your head with nonsense. You know how he gets. He loves to stir the pot. Just keep us posted on the discharge. And don't post anything on social media until we talk. Martin is very concerned about how this reflects on the family brand. The family brand? I asked. Dad sells insurance. Mom, we don't have a brand. We have a reputation in the community. Ariana, she said icily, we will talk later. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the phone. I felt cold. Not the shivering cold of a fever, but a deep, internal freeze. She hadn't asked how I felt. Not once. My phone buzzed again. A text from Martin. We're busy. Keep us posted. 5 words. He couldn't even be bothered to call. He couldn't be bothered to add an emoji or a love you. Just a command. Keep us posted. Like I was a subordinate missing a deadline. I stared at the screen until the backlight turned off, leaving me looking at my own reflection in the dark glass. I looked pale. I looked tired. But mostly, I looked like a fool. They're not coming, are they? Grandpa asked. I hadn't heard him come back in. He was carrying a small duffel bag and 2 coffees. No, I said. They're worried about the optics. Grandpa set the coffees down on the tray table. He didn't look surprised. He just looked sad. I brought you some things, he said, changing the subject. He unzipped the bag. Sweatpants, a clean t-shirt, your phone charger, toothbrush. Thank you, I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. How did you get into my apartment? I have the spare key you gave me 3 years ago, he said. Under the flower pot. He pulled out the clothes, folding them neatly on the bed. Then, he reached into the bottom of the bag and pulled out a manila folder. It was labeled Ariana Important in his shaky, block-letter handwriting. He hesitated before handing it to me. He held it with both hands, his knuckles white. Ariana, he said, what I showed you last night, the collection notice, that isn't the only thing. I looked at the folder. It looked innocuous, just a beige folder. But I felt a wave of nausea. What is it? I asked. I have been getting mail for you for about 6 months, Grandpa said. At first, I thought you just forgot to update your address with a few places, but then I opened one by mistake because I didn't have my glasses on. He placed the folder on my lap. Open it. I opened the folder. Inside was a stack of papers, smoothed out as if they had been crumpled and then flattened. The first one was a credit card statement from a store I had not shopped at in 5 years. The balance was $3,000. The charges were for home goods, landscaping supply, and gourmet grocery. The second was a letter from a company called Silvermark Student Services. Dear Ms. Stewart, regarding your appeal for loan forbearance. I frowned. I never filed an appeal, I said. I'm paying my loans. I'm on the income-driven plan. I never asked for forbearance. Read the rest, Grandpa said. We require the additional documentation regarding your household income to process the hardship claim. Hardship. I looked up at Grandpa. Why would I file for hardship? I have a job. If I file for hardship, the interest capitalizes. It ruins my repayment schedule. There is more, Grandpa said gently. I flipped the page. It was a printout of an email confirmation. Thank you for updating your profile. Ariana. Your new contact email is estewart_consultingmail.com. I stopped breathing. That was my mother's business email. She changed the contact email, I whispered. On my student loans. And on the bank account, Grandpa added. And on the credit monitoring sites. I shook my head, denial warring with the evidence in my lap. Maybe she was trying to help, I said, though the words tasted like ash. Maybe she thought I couldn't handle it. She always says I'm bad with money. Ariana, Grandpa said, his voice firm. Look at the dates. I looked. The credit card charges started 6 months ago. The loan forbearance appeal was dated 3 months ago, right around the time I told my parents I was on track to graduate. She put your loans in forbearance, so she wouldn't have to make payments on the Parent Plus loan she took out in your name, Grandpa said. If your loans are paused, hers are paused too. But I pay the Parent Plus loan, I said. I send them the money every month. I write the check to Dad. Grandpa looked away, his jaw tightening. And if the loan is in forbearance, where is that money going? The silence in the room was deafening. I had been sending my parents $400 a month for 3 years to cover the loan they took out for my freshman year, the year before I dropped out the first time. I sent it religiously. I ate ramen so I could send it. If the loan was paused. They kept it, I said. The realization didn't hit me all at once. It seeped in like ice water. They've been taking my money and not paying the loan. And using your credit to buy landscaping supplies, Grandpa said, pointing to the statement. And using your identity to open accounts. But why? I asked, my voice cracking. They have money. They have the house. They have the new car. Do they, Grandpa asked, or do they just have the appearance of it? I slumped back against the pillows. I felt violated. It wasn't just theft. A stranger stealing your identity is a crime. Your parents stealing your identity is a dismantling of your reality. A nurse walked in, then a different one from the morning shift. She was carrying a laptop on a rolling cart. Hi there, she said cheerfully. Just doing the hourly rounds. Can I check your name and date of birth? Ariana Stewart, May 12th, 1990. I said automatically. Great, I just wanted to verify something, the nurse said, typing. We had a flag in the system this morning. Someone logged into the patient portal about 20 minutes ago and tried to change the discharge instructions to home with family instead of independent discharge. I froze. Who? Well, the login came from the authorized user account, the nurse said. It shows as Elaine Stewart. Grandpa stood up. She is not here. Ariana is not going home with her. The nurse looked up, sensing the tension. Okay, did you authorize that change, Ms. Stewart? No, I said. I didn't authorize anything. Okay, the nurse said, her cheerfulness replaced by professional caution. I'm going to lock the portal access for now. We see this sometimes in complex family situations. We'll make sure the discharge paperwork is physical copy only. She typed a few more things and left the room. I looked at Grandpa. He sat back down, looking exhausted. I knew, he confessed quietly. I've known for a few months that something was wrong. I saw the mail. I heard things around town, people saying Martin was behind on his dues at the club, that Elaine was asking for short-term loans from friends. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. I wasn't angry, just hurt, because I didn't want to be the one to break your heart. Grandpa said, I didn't want to accuse your mother of a felony unless I was absolutely sure. I hoped I was wrong. I hoped it was just a mistake. He reached out and took my hand again. But when you fell yesterday, and they didn't come, I knew it wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy. If you are sick, if you are weak, you need them. And if you need them, you won't look too closely at the paperwork. I squeezed his hand. He was right. That was the terrifying logic of it. If I was the fragile, chaotic daughter who couldn't manage her life, then they were the saintly parents stepping in to handle things. It was the perfect cover. There was a soft knock on the door. A woman in a blazer entered. She had a kind, weary face and a clipboard. "Ms. Stewart, I'm Sarah, the social worker doctor. Evans requested." "Hi," I said. "I'm here to help coordinate your discharge," she said, pulling up a chair. "We want to make sure you have a safe place to go and that you have support." "I'm going to my grandfather's," I said, gesturing to Hal, "in Cedar Hollow." "Excellent," Sarah said. She made a note. "That's good, because we had a bit of an unusual inquiry earlier, and I wanted to clarify your wishes." "What inquiry?" Grandpa asked. "Someone called the main desk about an hour ago," Sarah said. "They asked for the specific time of discharge. They also asked if the patient would be requiring sedation or if she would be compliant for transport." I felt a chill run down my spine. Compliant. That was a Martin word. "Did they give a name?" I asked. Sarah shook her head. "No. When the receptionist asked for a name and relationship, the caller hung up, but the area code was local." She looked at me significantly. "In cases where there is family tension," Sarah said carefully, "sometimes family members try to intercept the patient. If you are going to your grandfather's, we can have security escort you to his car, just to be safe." "Intercept me?" I asked, my voice high. "Like I'm a package. Like you are a vulnerability," Grandpa said. His voice was hard now. The sadness was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. "They don't want you coming to my house, Ariana, because at my house, you'll have time to read that folder." I looked at the folder on my lap. The paper felt heavy, like it was made of lead. I thought about the family brand. I thought about the text message. I thought about the $3,000 in landscaping supplies while I was eating oatmeal for dinner to save money. They weren't just bad parents. They were predators, and I had been their prey for my entire adult life. "I want the escort," I said to Sarah. "I want security to walk us to the car." "Done," Sarah said. She stood up to leave. But I stopped her. "Wait," I said. "If they call back, or if they show up, yes. Tell them I've already left," I said. "Tell them I'm gone," Sarah nodded. "I can do that." When she left, the room fell silent again. I looked at Grandpa. He looked ready to fight a war. "You really think they would try to take me?" I asked him. "I think they are desperate," Grandpa said. "And desperate people do dangerous things. They know the house of cards is falling down. Ariana, and you are the one holding the match." I touched the folder again. I opened it to the silver mark letter. I looked at the signature line where my name had been forged. It was a good forgery. But the loop on the A was wrong. It was too fancy. It was Elaine's loop. I closed the folder. "Okay," I said. "Let's go to Cedar Hollow." "And the heart?" Grandpa asked. "What about the heart?" I put my hand over my chest. It was beating. It was irregular. It was skipping beats. But it was beating. "It's broken," I said. "But it's still working." Grandpa nodded. He stood up and began packing the bag. "That's all we need," he said. "We can work with that." I watched him pack my things, the sweatpants, the charger, the evidence of my stolen life. I realized then that I wasn't leaving the hospital as a graduate. I was leaving as a victim. But as I swung my legs over the side of the bed and felt the cold floor beneath my feet, I made a promise to myself. I might be a victim today, but by the time I was done with Elaine and Martin Stewart, I would be something else entirely. "Ready?" Grandpa asked, offering me his arm. "Ready," I said. And for the first time in my life, I walked away from the expectation of my parents' love, and I didn't look back. The wheelchair ride to the curb of St. Bridget Medical Center felt like a final indignity. I was 34 years old. capable of deadlifting 130 pounds. Yet I was being wheeled out like a porcelain doll that had already been glued back together twice. The nurse, a kind woman with tired eyes, chatted about the humidity, but I barely heard her. I was too busy scanning the parking lot, my heart doing that nervous flutter that Dr. Evans had told me was manageable but monitored. I wasn't looking for my car. My car was still abandoned in the student lot at Port Mason State, likely accruing tickets I couldn't pay. I was looking for a silver sedan, terrified that despite the security escort standing 5 feet away, my parents would somehow materialize from the asphalt to claim me. They didn't. Grandpa Hal pulled his dusty Ford truck up to the curb. The engine knocked with a rhythmic thud-thud-thud that sounded like a heartbeat. He got out, moving with the stiff deliberation of a man whose joints remembered every winter since 1942, and opened the passenger door. "Easy now," he said, offering me his hand. I took it. His grip was dry and firm. I hoisted myself up into the cab, the smell of old upholstery, peppermint candies, and sawdust hitting me instantly. It was the scent of my childhood summers, the smell of the only place where I hadn't felt like a project to be managed. "Seatbelt," Grandpa said, climbing into the driver's side. "I know," I said, clicking the buckle. As we pulled away, I watched the hospital fade in the side mirror. I had a packet of discharge papers in my lap. Strict rest, no driving for 7 days, cardiology follow-up in 2 weeks. Stress management recommended. Stress management. I almost laughed. My stress wasn't a lifestyle choice, it was a lineage. The drive to Cedar Hollow took 40 minutes. We left the sprawling, manicured suburbs where my parents lived a landscape of homeowners associations and chemically green lawns and entered the rolling, wooded hills where Grandpa had lived since before I was born. Cedar Hollow wasn't wealthy. The houses had peeling paint and tricycles in the driveways. The trees were overgrown, their roots buckling the sidewalks. But it was real. It didn't pretend to be anything it wasn't. Grandpa didn't turn on the radio. He seemed to understand that my brain was already too loud. When we pulled into his gravel driveway, the house looked exactly as it always did, a small, white bungalow with a wraparound porch that sagged slightly on the left side. The hydrangeas were blooming in riotous blue clusters against the railing. "Home," Grandpa said simply. Inside, the house was cool and dim. The air conditioning unit in the window hummed steadily. Grandpa led me to the guest room, my mother's old room. Though she had long ago stripped it of any personality, now it was just a room with a quilt-covered bed and a heavy oak dresser. "I made up the bed with the flannel sheets," he said. "I know it is summer, but you looked cold at the hospital." "Thank you," I said. I sat on the edge of the mattress, the springs creaking familiarly. "I am going to make tea," he said. "You rest. No phones, no panic." He closed the door, leaving it cracked just an inch. I lay back, staring at the ceiling fan circling lazily above me. I was exhausted. My body felt like it was made of lead, but my mind was vibrating with a frequency that made sleep impossible. Refund disbursement. $2,400. The number was burned into my retinas. I waited until I heard the whistle of the kettle from the kitchen. Then, moving quietly, I reached into my bag and pulled out my laptop. I knew I wasn't supposed to work. I knew Dr. Evans would disapprove, but I wasn't working. I was hunting. I sat cross-legged on the bed, ignoring the twinge in my chest, and opened the browser. The Wi-Fi password was taped to the bedside lamp, Hal Stewart. 1942. I logged into my university portal again. I needed to see it one more time to make sure I hadn't hallucinated it during my cardiac event. There it was. Refund processed, March 15th. Amount $2,400. Method direct deposit. I clicked on the transaction details. It showed the last 4 digits of the receiving account, 8890. I opened a new tab and typed routing number lookup. I entered the routing number listed on the transaction receipt. The result popped up instantly, Pinegate Community Credit Union. I stared at the screen. Pinegate was a small regional bank. There was a branch in Oak Haven. the town where I had briefly lived in my early 20s, and another one here in Cedar Hollow. But the main branch, the headquarters, was in the town where my parents lived. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. Not from weakness this time, but from adrenaline. I dialed the customer service number for Pinegate. "Thank you for calling Pinegate Community Credit Union. This is Brenda," a cheerful voice said. "Hi, Brenda," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My name is Ariana Stewart. I'm calling because I believe there is an account in my name that I don't have access to." "Oh, I can help with that," Brenda said. "I just need to verify some information. Can I get your full social security number?" I gave it to her. "And your date of birth?" "May 12th, 1990. There was the sound of typing on the other end. "Okay, Ms. Stewart, I see you here. You have a checking account and a small personal line of credit." The air left my lungs. A line of credit. "I see," I managed to say. "Brenda, can you tell me when was that account opened?" "Let's see. Whoa. Looks like it was opened in February of last year." February. That was right after I had told my parents I was finally eligible for graduation. "And can you tell me the address on the account?" "It is listed as P.O. Box 404 in Oak Creek." Oak Creek. That was my parents' town. I didn't have a P.O. box. "Brenda," I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "I need to know who is authorized on this account. Is there anyone else listed?" "Well, it is an individual account," Brenda said, her voice faltering slightly as she read the screen. "But there is a secondary authorized user for overdraft protection and power of attorney access. Elaine Stewart." The name hit me like a physical blow. It was one thing to suspect it. It was another to hear a stranger say it over the phone. Elaine Stewart. My mother. The woman who had birthed me. Who had critiqued my posture. Who had told me I was too emotional to handle money. "Ms. Stewart, are you still there?" "I'm here," I whispered. "Brenda, I did not open this account." The cheerfulness evaporated from Brenda's voice, replaced by a sharp, professional alertness. "Okay, that is a serious statement. Ms. Stewart, if you are saying this is fraud—" "It is," I said. "My mother, the secondary contact, she must have opened it." "I see," Brenda said slowly. "We take this very seriously. I can freeze the account right now, but you will need to come into a branch or send us a notarized affidavit to proceed with a fraud investigation." "Freeze it," I said. "Freeze everything, the checking, the line of credit, all of it." "Done," she said. "It is locked, no money in, no money out." "Thank you," I said. I hung up and let the phone drop onto the quilt. I felt sick, not the lightheaded sickness of the arrhythmia, but a deep, roiling nausea in my gut. My mother hadn't just stolen money. She had impersonated me. She had walked into a bank or used an online portal and signed my name. She had looked at a form that asked, "Are you Ariana Stewart?" and she had checked yes. The door creaked open. Grandpa Hal stood there with a tray, 2 mugs of tea and a plate of toast. He looked at me, then at the laptop, then at my face. He set the tray down on the dresser carefully. "You know," he said. It wasn't a question. "Pinegate," I said, my voice hollow. "She is listed as the secondary contact. She opened a line of credit. Grandpa. In my name." Grandpa nodded slowly. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. "Drink your tea," he said. "Then we work." He pulled the desk chair over to the side of the bed. For the next 2 hours, the house was silent except for the clicking of keys and the rustle of paper. Grandpa didn't treat me like an invalid. He treated me like a partner. He walked me through the steps. We went to the credit bureau websites. We placed a fraud alert on Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. We requested our free credit reports. "This is the hard part," Grandpa said, pointing to the screen where a list of inquiries had popped up. Looking at the damage, it was a bloodbath. There were inquiries from credit card companies I had never heard of. There was a query from an auto leasing agency. There was the Pinegate account. "Lock it," Grandpa said. "Freeze the credit. Nobody opens anything else. Not today. Not ever." I clicked the button. Credit frozen. It felt like closing a blast door. "Now," Grandpa said, handing me a notepad. "Write down everything you remember. Every time you gave them a password. Every time they asked for your social security number for insurance purposes. Every time you signed a document they didn't let you read fully." I started writing. The list was longer than I expected. My parents had been the administrators of my life for so long that I hadn't even noticed the cage they were building until they locked the door. I was just finishing the list when I heard the sound of gravel crunching outside. Grandpa's head snapped up. He looked out the window. His expression hardened into stone. "Who is it?" I asked, though I already knew. "Elaine," he said. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I can't see her. Grandpa, I can't." "You don't have to," Grandpa said, standing up. "Stay here." "No," I said, surprising myself. I swung my legs off the bed. "No, if I hide, she wins. If I hide, she thinks I'm the scared little girl she can manipulate." I stood up. I was wearing oversized sweatpants and a t-shirt that said Port Mason State on it. I looked like a wreck, but I was standing. "Ariana," Grandpa warned. "I'm coming out," I said. We walked into the living room just as the front door opened. My mother didn't knock. She never knocked. She viewed doors as suggestions, not barriers. "Hal Yoo-hoo," Elaine breezed in, carrying a plastic tray of cookies from the supermarket bakery, the kind with the neon pink frosting that tasted like chemicals. She was wearing a beige linen suit that cost more than my car, and her hair was perfectly blown out. She stopped when she saw us. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then reassembled itself into a beam of radiant, performative warmth. "Ariana." "Oh, thank God," she cried, rushing forward but stopping short of hugging me when she saw the look on my face. "We were so worried when the hospital said you'd been discharged. Why didn't you call us? Martin is parking the car. But I just had to run in." She set the cookies on the coffee table, right on top of Grandpa's stack of National Geographic magazines. "I brought your favorites," she said, gesturing to the cookies. I hated sugar cookies. I had always hated them. I liked oatmeal raisin. She knew this. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe she had never actually paid attention. "What are you doing here, Elaine?" Grandpa asked. His voice was level, but there was a dangerous undertone to it. "I am checking on my daughter," Elaine said, acting affronted. Is a mother not allowed to check on her child who collapsed yesterday? It was all over the internet. "Hal, people are talking." "People," I said. My voice was raspy. "Is that why you're here? Because people are talking?" Elaine sighed, a dramatic exhalation that was meant to signal how difficult I was being. "Ariana, don't be like that. We are under a lot of stress. Your father is dealing with the insurance adjusters, and I have the gala next week. And then this happens." She looked at me with a pitying tilt of her head. "You know how you get when you're overwhelmed. You stop thinking clearly. You make scenes." "I had a heart arrhythmia," I said. "I didn't make a scene. My heart stopped beating correctly." "Well, yes, because you overwork yourself," Elaine said, smoothing her skirt. "That's why we try to help you. That's why we try to take things off your plate." She took a step closer, her voice dropping to that reasonable, gaslighting tone she had perfected over 30 years. "That's actually why I came," she said. "I know you're not in a state to handle logistics. I have some paperwork in the car, just standard things. Power of attorney for medical decisions. Just in case this happens again, and we need to transfer your student account access back to me so I can handle the billing, you don't need to worry about numbers right now." I stared at her. She was doing it right in front of me. She was trying to get me to sign away my rights while I was still recovering from a medical emergency. "I don't need help with the numbers," I said. "I saw the numbers. Mom." "What numbers?" She blinked. "The picture of innocence." "The refund," I said. "The student loan refund?" Elaine's face went blank. For a second, She looked like a computer rebooting. Then, a flicker of panic crossed her eyes, quickly masked by annoyance. "Oh, that," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "Ariana, honestly, it was a clerical thing. We moved it to a secure account so you wouldn't spend it on, well, you know how you are with impulse buys. We were holding it for you." "Holding it?" I asked. "In an account at Pinegate that I didn't know existed." "It was for your own good," Elaine snapped, her facade cracking. "We have expenses. Ariana, we have been supporting you for years, and we just wanted to make sure that $2,400 didn't just vanish into thin air." The room went silent. I hadn't mentioned the amount. Grandpa Hal crossed his arms. "Ariana didn't say how much the refund was." Elaine froze. Her mouth was slightly open. She looked from me to Grandpa, realizing her mistake. "Well," she stammered, her face flushing a blotchy red. "I assumed. I saw the statement. I handle the mail." "You handle the mail that you stole," Grandpa said. "I am her mother," Elaine shouted, dropping the act entirely, her face twisted into something ugly and familiar. "I have a right, after everything we've done. The dance lessons, the tuition, the car. We gave her everything, and she treats us like criminals because we moved some money around to keep the family afloat." "You opened a credit line in my name," I said, my voice shaking. "You forged my signature." "I was protecting your credit," Elaine yelled. "You would have ruined it. You're unstable. Ariana, look at you. You're living in this shack with a senile old man because you can't handle the real world." "Get out," Grandpa said. He didn't shout. He just said it with the weight of an anchor dropping. "You can't talk to me like that," Elaine hissed. "I'm her mother." "You are a thief," Grandpa said. "And you are trespassing. Get out of my house before I call the sheriff. And tell Martin if he sets one foot on my porch, I will have him arrested too." Elaine looked at me, expecting me to crumble, expecting me to apologize and beg her to stay. That was the script. That was how it always went. I looked her in the eye. "Leave, Mom. Take your cookies." Elaine stared at me with pure venom. She snatched the plastic container off the table. "You are making a huge mistake," she spat. "You are going to need us, and when you do, don't come crawling back." She turned and marched out the door, slamming it so hard the windows rattled. I stood there, trembling. My legs felt like jelly. I sat down heavily on the sofa. "Breathe," Grandpa said, sitting next to me. "Just breathe." "She knew the number," I whispered. "She knew exactly how much it was." "Because she spent it," Grandpa said. We sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the sound of the car peeling out of the driveway. My heart was racing, but it wasn't the arrhythmia this time. It was rage. Cold, clarifying rage. The phone rang, the landline on the wall. Grandpa got up and answered it. He put it on speaker without asking. "Hal?" Martin's voice boomed into the kitchen. It was deep, authoritative, the voice he used when he was trying to intimidate a client into buying a premium policy. "Martin," Grandpa said. "I don't know what lies you are feeding her," Martin said, his voice dripping with aggression. "But you need to stay out of this. You always liked stirring up trouble. You always wanted to turn her against us." "I didn't turn her," Grandpa said calmly. "You did that when you stole her identity." "Watch your mouth, old man," Martin growled. "We have rights. We have power of attorney. If you try to interfere with our finances, I will bury you in legal fees. Do you hear me? I will take that house." I flinched. Martin knew exactly where to hit. Grandpa's house was all he had. "You can try," Grandpa said. "But Ariana is an adult. She revoked your access this morning. The hospital knows. The bank knows. You think she can survive without us?" Martin laughed a cruel, barking sound. "She's weak. Hal, she'll be begging for money in a month, and you're just a glorified babysitter. Send her home." Grandpa straightened up. He looked at the phone receiver like it was something dirty. "No," Grandpa said. "I always liked protecting my granddaughter, And frankly, Martin, you're not scary. You're just broke." He hung up the phone. He stood there for a moment, his hand on the receiver, his chest heaving slightly. Then he turned to me. "He's bluffing," Grandpa said. "About the house, about the power of attorney. He's trying to scare us." "I know," I said. "But it worked. I'm scared." "Good," Grandpa said. "Fear makes you careful, but don't let it make you stop." The evening settled over Cedar Hollow. The crickets started their chorus in the tall grass. Grandpa made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup simple. Hot food that settled the knot in my stomach. We didn't talk much about the confrontation. We watched an old Western on the television, the flickering blue light filling the living room. At 10 o'clock, Grandpa went to bed. "Try to sleep," he said. "Tomorrow, we go to the police station to file the report." "I will," I said, but I didn't go to sleep. I went back to the guest room and opened my laptop again. I logged into my email. I needed to see if there was anything else, any other accounts, any other notifications I had missed. I went to the sent folder. There were dozens of emails I recognized, assignments sent to professors, questions to colleagues. But then, I saw one I didn't recognize. It was dated 4 months ago. The subject line was Authorization Update. I clicked on it. It was sent to the Financial Aid Office at Port Mason State. To whom it may concern, please be advised that due to my rigorous capstone schedule, I will be unavailable for phone calls regarding my account. Please direct all inquiries and verbal authorizations to my mother, Elaine Stewart, at the number below. She has full authority to make decisions regarding disbursements and loan adjustments. Thank you. Ariana Stewart. I stared at the words. I had never written this. I looked at the timestamp. Tuesday, 2:14 p.m. I checked my calendar for that date 4 months ago. Tuesday at 2:14 p.m. I had been at work. My laptop had been at my apartment. I remembered that day. My mother had come over to drop off some winter coats she was clearing out of her closet. She had let herself in with the spare key I gave her. She had sat at my desk. She had opened my laptop. My password was my birthday. She knew it. She had written this email pretending to be me, granting herself permission to rob me, and then she had probably watered my plants before she left. I read the line again. Please direct all inquiries to my mother. It wasn't just about the money. The money was the mechanism, but the goal was control. They wanted to make sure that no one spoke to me. They wanted to filter my reality. They wanted to be the gatekeepers of my life so that I would never know I was solvent, never know I was capable, never know I could leave them. I closed the laptop. The room felt very small, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a bunker. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. "They've been inside my life for years," I said out loud. The words hung in the quiet air. It was a terrifying admission, but it was also a liberation. Because if they had to work this hard to control me, if they had to forge emails, steal mail, and gaslight me into believing I was crazy, then I must be stronger than they ever let me believe. I turned off the lamp. I wasn't going to just survive this. I was going to dismantle them, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, lie by lie. I pulled the flannel sheet up to my chin and waited for the morning. The phone call with Larkin and Wren Patient Advocacy was the first time I heard a professional explain the mechanics of my vulnerability. I was sitting at Grandpa Hal's kitchen table, a mug of lukewarm tea in front of me, staring at the dust motes dancing in the shaft of sunlight that cut across the linoleum. "Ms. Stewart," the advocate, a woman named Beverly, said over the speakerphone, "We have locked down your portal access, but I want to explain how this likely happened so you can prevent it elsewhere. When the hospital system flagged the login, it wasn't a hack in the traditional sense. The user reset the password using the security questions." I closed my eyes. "Let me guess. Mother's maiden name. Mother's maiden name. Name of first pet, and the street you grew up on." Beverly listed. I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my throat. For anyone else, those questions were a fortress. For my parents, they were an open door. They didn't need to be hackers. They just needed to be my parents. They had built the house on the street I grew up on. They had bought the dog. They owned the maiden name. They used their own history to access my future, I said. It is a common issue in familial fraud cases, Beverly said, her voice gentle but clinically detached. We have added a verbal passphrase to your file. No one accesses your records without saying the word Oakhaven. Do not share this with anyone. I won't, I said. After I hung up, the silence in the kitchen felt heavy. Grandpa Hal was standing by the sink, drying a plate with a checkered towel. He had been listening, his back to me, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. He turned around slowly. He looked older today. The fight with Martin on the phone yesterday seemed to have drained some of the color from his face, leaving him gray and weary. Ariana, he said, we need to talk about your grandmother. I looked up, surprised. Grandma Rose? What about her? When she died 5 years ago, Grandpa said, leaning against the counter. You remember what happened with the estate? I remember there wasn't one, I said. Elaine and Martin handled the paperwork. They told me Grandma had a lot of medical debt and that the house was the only asset, which went to you. They said there was nothing left for the grandchildren. Grandpa's jaw tightened. He set the plate down with a clatter. That is what they told you, he said. And that is what they told me about the insurance policies. They said the policies had lapsed. They said the small investment accounts had been drained by market fees. You think they lied? I asked. I think, Grandpa said, choosing his words carefully, that I was grieving. I was 80 years old, and I had just lost my wife of 50 years. I didn't have the energy to fight my son and his wife when they offered to handle the headache of the probate. I signed what they put in front of me. He walked over to the table and sat down opposite me. But Rose was meticulous. Ariana, she saved everything. Coffee cans of cash, bonds, and she had a separate account she called the Legacy Fund. She talked about it for years. She wanted it to go to you and your cousins for education. They told me it didn't exist, I said. I suspect it did, Grandpa said, and I suspect it never made it to the probate court, or if it did, the notifications went to the wrong place. A chill went through me. The wrong place. Can we check? I asked. County records are public, Grandpa said. We can look right now. I opened my laptop. My fingers flew across the keys, fueled by a dark, manic energy. I navigated to the county clerk's website for the district where Grandma had lived. I searched for Rosemary Stewart. There were 5 filings: death certificate, will submission, executor appointment. I clicked on the petition for probate. It was a scanned PDF. Grainy and slightly crooked, I scrolled down to the section listed beneficiaries. There were 3 names: Harold Stewart spouse, Martin Stewart son, Ariana Stewart grandchild. I'm listed, I whispered. I'm right here. Keep reading, Grandpa said. I looked at the column next to my name address for notice. I read the address out loud. 1402 Maple Drive, Unit B, Port Mason. I frowned. I never lived at Maple Drive. 5 years ago, I was living in the dorms, and before that, I was at the apartment on 4th Street. 1402 Maple Drive, Grandpa repeated. Why does that sound familiar? I typed the address into a search bar. A street view image popped up. It was a duplex, a shabby beige building with overgrown hedges. It's a rental, I said. Wait, Grandpa said. He stood up and walked to the living room, rummaging through a stack of old files in his desk. He came back with a dusty binder labeled Taxes. He flipped through the pages until he found a Schedule E form from 6 years ago. It was attached to a copy of a document Martin had sent him for reference. Here, Grandpa said, pointing to a line on the tax form. Stewart Ridge Holdings, LLC, property address, 1402, Maple Drive, Unit B. The room spun. Martin owned it, I said. Dad owned the apartment listed as my address. He owned it through an LLC, Grandpa corrected. He routed the probate court notifications to a mailbox he controlled. They sent the letters telling you that you were a beneficiary to a house he owned. So he could throw them away, I said. The realization was physically painful, like a cramp in my stomach. They legally notified me, but they ensured I would never see the mail. And when you didn't respond to claim your share, Grandpa said, his voice hard, the funds likely defaulted to the executor, to Martin. I stared at the screen. It was so clean. It was so bureaucratic. It wasn't a violent robbery. It was a paperwork robbery. It was a theft committed with stamps and filing fees. How much? I asked. Does it say how much? Not on the summary, Grandpa said. We would need the full accounting, but Rose wasn't poor. Ariana, she wasn't rich, but she wasn't poor. I closed the laptop lid halfway, needing a break from the glow. I thought about the last 5 years. I thought about the nights I had eaten peanut butter for dinner because I was $5 short on rent. I thought about the times I had called my parents crying, asking for help with a textbook, and they had sighed and said, "We wish we could." Honey, things are just tight right now. They had been sitting on my inheritance. They had stolen my grandmother's last gift to me and used it to buy. What country club memberships, leases on cars they couldn't afford. I'm going to call them, I said. Ariana, Grandpa warned. You're angry. Anger makes mistakes. I need to hear them say it, I said. I need to hear them deny it. I need to know. Grandpa, I need to know that they are actually this evil. Because a part of me, the stupid child, part of me still thinks this is all a misunderstanding. Grandpa looked at me for a long moment, then he nodded. Put it on speaker. I dialed the number. My hands were steady, but inside, my chest was vibrating with that dangerous, fluttery rhythm Dr. Evans had warned me about. Martin answered on the second ring. What is it now? He barked. No hello, no concern. I found the probate filing, I said. Silence. Absolute, dead silence on the line. I don't know what you're talking about, Martin said, but his voice lacked its usual boom. It sounded thin. 1402 Maple Drive, I said. Stewart Ridge Holdings. You listed your own rental property as my address, so I wouldn't get the letters about Grandma's money. Elaine, Martin shouted away from the phone. Pick up the extension. There was a click, and then the sound of breathing. Ariana. Elaine's voice was high, breathless. What is this nonsense? We are trying to have lunch. Did you think I wouldn't find out? I asked. Did you think I would never look? You are imagining things, Elaine said instantly. The gaslighting came as naturally to her as breathing. You are hysterical. Ariana, you've had a medical episode. You're confused. I'm looking at the document. Mom, I said. I see the address. I see the LLC name. So what? Elaine snapped, the pivot occurring in a split second. So we handled the mail. You were 29 years old, Ariana. You were dropping out of school. You were a mess. If we had given you that money, you would have wasted it. It wasn't your money to decide how I spent, I said. We spent it on you. Elaine shrieked. Who do you think paid for your car insurance? Who do you think paid for your phone bill all those years? We used that money to keep you alive, you ungrateful little. You stole from me, I said, my voice cutting through her hysterics. And you stole from Grandma. We sacrificed everything for you, Elaine cried. She was crying now, or pretending to. We have given up our lives to make sure you looked successful, to make sure you had a chance. And this is how you repay us, by digging through old paperwork with your grandfather. Grandpa is the only family I have, I said. He's poisoning you, Martin shouted. He's always been jealous of our success. He's a bitter old man living in a shack. He's an honest man, I said, and you are criminals. Don't you dare, Elaine hissed. Don't you dare use that word. If you say one word of this to anyone, Ariana, I swear to God, do you know how this makes us look? Do you know what this would do to your father's business? I don't care about the business, I said. I care about the truth. There is no truth, Elaine screamed. There is only what people believe, and nobody will believe you. You're the girl who collapsed. You're the girl who couldn't finish college on time. We are the pillars of this community." I hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone. My heart was pounding so hard I could see my shirt moving with the beat. "They admitted it," Grandpa said softly. "Yeah," I said. "They admitted it. They hadn't denied taking the money. They had just justified it. In their minds, I was an asset they owned, and any resources attached to me were theirs to manage." I stood up, but my knees buckled. Grandpa caught me. "Okay," he said. "That's enough. We are going to the cardiologist. Now, doctor." Evans had referred me to a specialist in Cedar Hollow. A doctor, Patel. Her office was small and quiet, with prints of serene landscapes on the walls. I sat on the exam table, shirtless under the paper gown, while the technician peeled the sticky sensors off my skin. "Doctor," Patel studied the readout from the monitor. "The arrhythmia is consistent with something called SVT, supraventricular tachycardia." "Doctor," Patel said, "it's manageable. We can treat it with beta blockers. But what I am seeing here," she tapped the paper, "is a heart that is reacting to adrenaline as if it is being chased by a bear. Constantly." She looked at me over her glasses. "Stress isn't just an emotion, Ms. Stewart. It is a chemical bath. Your cortisol levels are through the roof. Your body has been sounding alarms for a long time. Have you been ignoring them?" I thought about the headaches I'd had for years, the insomnia, the stomach aches. I blamed on cheap food. "I thought I was just weak," I said. "I thought I just needed to try harder." "You are not weak. Doctor," Patel said firmly, "you are running a marathon at a sprint pace. If you don't slow down, if you don't remove the stressors, the medication won't work. You have to change the environment." I nodded. "I'm working on it." When we walked out to the truck, Grandpa was waiting. He had a notebook in his hand. "How was it?" he asked. "Manageable," I said. "But I have to cut out the stress." Grandpa nodded. "Then we have a decision to make." He opened the notebook. He had made 2 columns. "Option 1, he said. "We go to the police station right now. We show them the probate record, the credit report, the Pinegate account. They will file a report. They might arrest them. But what? But your parents will fight," Grandpa said. "They will hire lawyers. They will say it was a misunderstanding, a family dispute. They will say you authorized it verbally, without hard-proof signatures, bank trails, IP addresses. It becomes a he said, she said, and they are very good at talking." "And option 2, I asked. "Option 2, Grandpa said, his eyes dark. "We wait, we gather, we get the full bank records from Pinegate, we get the IP logs from the hospital, we get the original probate file with the signatures. We build a wall of evidence so high that they can't talk their way over it." "That will take time," I said. "And it means I have to let them think they're getting away with it for a little longer." "It means you have to be cold," Grandpa said. "It means you can't be the emotional daughter anymore. You have to be the plaintiff." I looked out the windshield at the sleepy main street of Cedar Hollow. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn their house down. But I knew Grandpa was right. Elaine and Martin thrived on chaos. They thrived on emotion. If I went to the police now, crying and shaking, I was just the unstable daughter. "We gather," I said. "I don't want a dispute. I want a conviction." "Good," Grandpa said. That night, my phone started buzzing. It buzzed once, then twice, then a continuous, angry vibration against the nightstand. I picked it up. I had 42 notifications. Aunt Sarah commented on a post. Cousin Mike liked a photo. Elaine Stewart tagged you in a photo. I opened the app, my thumb hovering over the screen. There it was, a photo of me from graduation day. But it wasn't a photo my parents had taken. It was a photo pulled from a classmate's Instagram, someone standing behind me in line. I looked pale, sweaty, and terrified. But from a distance, it just looked like I was focused. Elaine had cropped the classmate out. The caption read, "So incredibly proud of our brave girl." Ariana has been working so hard, she literally exhausted herself crossing the finish line. It was a scary moment for us at the ceremony, but we are so grateful she is recovering. Thank you to everyone for the prayers. We are taking good care of her. Proud parents, family. First, resilience. I stared at the screen. We are taking good care of her. They weren't taking care of me. They were stealing from me. They were currently banned from my driveway. I scrolled through the comments. Aunt Sarah, you guys are such amazing parents. She is lucky to have you. Neighbor Barb, praying for her. You two are saints for everything you do. Random cousin, great job. Ariana, listen to your mom and dad. It was a masterclass in narrative control. Elaine had taken my trauma, my medical emergency caused by their neglect and theft, and turned it into a testament to her own martyrdom. She was getting dopamine hits of praise for handling the crisis she created. I felt a surge of nausea. I wanted to comment. I wanted to type, "They didn't come. They stole my money." But I stopped. Anger makes mistakes. Grandpa had said, if I commented now, I would look unhinged. I would look like the ungrateful daughter lashing out at her saintly mother. I would be playing her game, on her field. I took a screenshot of the post. I took screenshots of the comments. I saved them to a folder on my phone labeled evidence. Then I put the phone down and turned it off. Let them have the likes. I thought, I will take the logs. 2 days later, Grandpa drove me to the Port Mason Federal Credit Bureau. This wasn't a bank branch. It was the Regional Fraud Investigation Office. It was a gray building that smelled of carpet cleaner and ozone. We sat in a small, windowless room with an investigator named Mr. Henderson. He was a man who looked like he had seen every possible variation of human greed. "Ms. Stewart," he said, opening a file. "We received your affidavit regarding the account at Pinegate and the unauthorized inquiries." "Yes," I said. "We have been coordinating with Pinegate's internal security team." "Mr. Henderson said, "They pulled the original account opening documents. These were done in person, at the branch in Oak Creek." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a signature card. Ariana Stewart. The signature was loopy, slanted to the right. "Is that your signature, Mr.?" Henderson asked. "No," I said. "I sign with a flat line and a sharp A. That signature. That looks like my mother's handwriting when she tries to write like me." "Mr.?" Henderson nodded. He didn't look surprised. "We also pulled the notary log. The notary at the branch stamped it. We interviewed her yesterday. She remembers the couple. She said the mother did most of the talking. She said the daughter you was waiting in the car because you weren't feeling well. So the mother took the papers out to be signed." "I wasn't in the car," I said. "I was at work. I can prove it with my time card." The notary violated protocol by not witnessing the signature. "Mr. Henderson said, making a note. "That voids the contract. But more importantly, we have the surveillance footage from the bank lobby that day. You are not on it. Elaine and Martin Stewart are." "So it's proven," Grandpa said. "It is consistent with identity theft," Mr. Henderson said. He used that careful, official phrasing that drove me crazy. "However, because the perpetrators are parents, and because there is a history of shared addresses, the district attorney often hesitates to prosecute unless the financial damage is quantified and substantial. They view it as a civil matter." "How substantial?" I asked. "The line of credit has a balance of $8,000, Mr. Henderson said. "Plus the diversion of the student loan refund. We are looking at over $10,000 in direct theft. That crosses the threshold for felony larceny." He looked at me with sympathy. "Ms. Stewart, if we proceed, this becomes a criminal investigation. Your parents will be questioned. They will likely be arrested. There is no going back." I looked at the signature card again. I looked at the loopy A. I thought about the sweat on my forehead in the hospital bed. I thought about the family brand. They had not hesitated. They had not hesitated to risk my future to fund their present. They had walked into a bank, smiled at a teller, and sold me out. "Proceed," I said. Are you sure, Mr. Henderson asked. It gets ugly. It's already ugly, I said. I'm just turning on the lights. On the drive back to Cedar Hollow, I felt a shift inside me. For years, I had thought I was broken. I thought I was anxious, incapable, and dependent. I thought I needed my parents to translate the world for me because I wasn't strong enough to understand it myself. But that was the lie. I looked at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. My anxiety wasn't a flaw. It was a signal. My body had known. My subconscious had known. Every time I felt sick when my mother called, every time I felt a pit in my stomach when my father mentioned finances, it wasn't irrational fear. It was instinct. I had been living with wolves, and my body had been trying to tell me to run. You okay? Grandpa asked, glancing at me. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm clear. Clarity is good, Grandpa said. Grandpa, I said, I don't just want the money back. I want everyone to know. I want the family brand to burn. Grandpa smiled, a small, grim tightening of his lips. Well, graduation is still officially open. The university is holding the makeup ceremony next weekend for the students who missed the walk. I know, I said. Your parents will be there, Grandpa said. Elaine won't miss a chance to take a real photo. I know, I repeated. I imagined the scene, the robes, the cameras, my parents smiling, playing the role of the supportive family, thinking they had managed the crisis, thinking they had silenced me. I'm going to walk, I said, and I'm going to bring the papers. The service papers? Grandpa asked. The service papers, I said. If they want a show, let's give them a show. It's not revenge, Grandpa said softly, echoing a thought I had earlier. No, I said. It's consequences. I leaned back in the seat and watched the trees blur by. I wasn't afraid of being disliked anymore. I wasn't afraid of the awkward silence at Thanksgiving or the angry texts. I was afraid of being used, and that fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp determination. I was going to graduate, and then I was going to serve them. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, mixed in with a stack of circulars for lawn care and discount tires. It looked official, the kind of heavy linen stock stationery that lawyers use to intimidate people before they even open the flap. The return address was embossed in gold foil Stewart Ridge Holdings, LLC. I sat on Grandpa Hal's front porch, the wood slats warm beneath my legs, and stared at it. I knew that name. It was the shell company my father, Martin, used to manage his rental properties, the same entity that owned the apartment where my probate notices had been conveniently lost. I slid my thumb under the seal and ripped it open. Notice of default and demand for payment. Dear Ms. Stewart, pursuant to the personal guarantee signed by you on January 12, 2023, regarding the commercial line of credit for Stewart Ridge Holdings. This letter serves as formal notice that the account is in arrears. The lending institution has called the note due to missed payments. As the guarantor, you are liable for the immediate payment of $12,400 to cure the default and prevent legal action. Sincerely, Martin Stewart, Managing Member. I read it twice, then I set it down on the porch railing and picked up my mug of tea. My hand was perfectly steady. A week ago, this letter would have sent me into a spiral of panic. I would have called my father, sobbing, asking how I could possibly owe $12,000. Asking what I had done wrong. I would have believed I had signed something in a fog of exhaustion. I would have apologized for existing. But today, I just felt a cold, clinical fascination. My father was billing me. He had forged my name as a guarantor on his own business loan, stopped paying the loan, and was now sending me a formal demand letter to pay his debt using the identity he had stolen from me. It was circular, predatory logic. He was eating his own young to feed the machine of his ego. Bad news, Grandpa Hal asked. Stepping out onto the porch, the screen door slammed shut behind him with a sharp thwack. No, I said, handing him the letter. Evidence. Grandpa put on his reading glasses. He scanned the document. his bushy gray eyebrows knitting together. He didn't get angry anymore. He just got sadder, as if every new revelation chipped away at the image of the son he thought he had raised. "He is threatening to sue you for money he stole," Grandpa said quietly. "He's not going to sue me," I said. "He's trying to scare me. He knows I locked the credit accounts. He knows the tap has run dry. This is him trying to shake the vending machine to see if one last quarter falls out." "We need to show this to Mara," Grandpa said. "We will," I said. "Tomorrow." Mara Kesley's office was located in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a donut shop. It didn't have the mahogany and leather aesthetic of the firms my parents hired, but Mara herself was sharp as a tack. She was a woman in her 50s with a messy bun and eyes that missed nothing. She spread the documents out on her conference table, the Pinegate fraud affidavit, the probate filing with the wrong address, the new demand letter from Stewart Ridge Holdings, and the stack of credit reports Grandpa and I had printed. "It is a lot," Mara said, tapping a pen against her chin. "I see this in divorce cases all the time, but in parent-child relationships, it takes a special kind of entitlement. What are my options?" I asked. Mara sat forward. "Option 1 is the identity theft report we already started. That stops the bleeding. It alerts the lenders that the debt isn't yours. But it doesn't solve the Stewart Ridge issue immediately, because Martin has a piece of paper with a signature that looks like yours." "It's a forgery," I said. "We know that," Mara said, "but proving it requires a handwriting expert and a civil suit. That brings us to option 2. We file a civil complaint for damages. We sue for the return of the student loan refund, the fraudulent credit lines, and punitive damages for the emotional distress and medical consequences." She looked at Grandpa, then at me. "Option 3 is an injunction. We get a court order preventing them from contacting you, using your name, or coming within 500 feet of you. It's essentially a restraining order for financial abuse." "I want all of it," I said. Mara nodded, but she held up a hand. "I need to warn you. Ariana, family fraud cases are ugly. Not just legally, but socially. Your parents are going to launch a counter-narrative. They will say you are mentally unstable. They will say you authorized this help because you couldn't manage your own affairs. They will drag out every mistake you made in your 20s to paint a picture of a girl who needed saving." She paused, watching my face. "You will lose people," she said. "Aunts, uncles, family friends. People don't like to believe that nice couples who host garden parties steal from their children. It is easier for them to believe the daughter is ungrateful." I looked at the demand letter lying on the table. $12,400. I thought about the years I spent apologizing. I thought about the graduation ceremony where I collapsed, and the empty chairs where my parents should have been. "I'm not afraid of being disliked anymore," I said. The words came out with a weight I hadn't expected. I spent my whole life being afraid they would be disappointed in me. I twisted myself into knots to be likable, to be low maintenance, to be good, and they ate me alive anyway. I looked Mara in the eye. "I'm not afraid of being disliked," I repeated. "I'm afraid of being used, and I am done being used." Mara smiled. It was a fierce, approving smile. "Okay then," she said. "Let's go to war." 2 days later, I drove to the Port Mason campus. I technically wasn't supposed to be driving yet, but the week-long restriction was up, and I needed to meet with the registrar to confirm I could walk in the makeup ceremony on Saturday. The campus was quiet. Most students had already left for the summer. The humidity hung heavy over the brick buildings, making the air feel like warm soup. I finished my meeting with the registrar, a kind woman who didn't ask details about my medical emergency, but simply handed me a new name card for the announcer and walked out into the sunlight. "Ariana." The voice was bright, chipper, and instantly spiked my heart rate. I turned. Elaine was standing near the fountain, wearing a floral dress and holding an oversized tote bag. She looked like she had just stepped out of a catalog for successful, supportive mothers. She hurried toward me, her heels clicking on the pavement. "I knew I'd find you here," she said, reaching out to touch my arm. I stepped back. Her hand hovered in the air, then dropped. I tracked your phone. Well, I guessed you'd be handling the paperwork. What do you want? Mom, I asked. I'm here to help, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I know Saturday is the makeup walk. I wanted to make sure we coordinate the logistics. Martin and I have invited the cousins. We're going to do a big brunch beforehand at the country club. I'm not going to brunch, I said, and I don't want the cousins there. Don't be silly, Elaine laughed, a brittle sound. Of course you want family there. It's a celebration. Look, I even brought your sash. She started digging in her tote bag. I just need one thing, she said, pulling out her phone instead of a sash. Come here. The light is perfect by the fountain. Let's get a quick selfie. I want to post that you're back on your feet and ready to shine. She stepped into my space, raising the phone, angling her face for the camera. She wrapped an arm around my shoulders, her grip tight, pinning me in place. Mom, stop, I said, pulling away. Just one photo. Ariana, she snapped, her voice dropping an octave. Stop being difficult. Smile. No, I said loudly. I shoved her arm off me. Elaine stumbled back in her heels, catching herself on the rim of the fountain. Her face contorted, the mask of the doting mother vanished, replaced by a snarl of pure panic. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? She hissed. Everyone is asking why we haven't posted a picture with you since the hospital. They are asking questions. Ariana, if you don't take this picture, people will think we are estranged. We are estranged, I said. You stole from me. We borrowed, she shouted, not caring who heard. We borrowed against an asset that was sitting there doing nothing. Do you know what kind of pressure your father is under? She stepped closer, her eyes wide and manic. The business is underwater. Ariana, the rentals are empty. We have a balloon payment due on the house next month. We needed your credit score to refinance the bridge loan. If that demand letter isn't paid, if that credit line is frozen, we lose everything. The house, the club membership, everything. I stared at her. The revelation landed with the force of a physical blow. They weren't rich. They weren't even comfortable. They were destitute, living on a mountain of debt, using my clean financial slate as the final brick in their crumbling wall. They had destroyed my financial start in life not because they were greedy billionaires, but because they were failures who couldn't bear to look poor. That's why you're here, I said softly. You don't want a photo for love. You want a photo to show the bank that we're a united front. You need me to co-sign the refinance. Elaine straightened her dress, trying to regain her dignity. We are a family, she said, her voice trembling. We help each other. You help us now. And when the market turns, we pay you back. That's how it works. That's not how it works, I said. You don't steal from family. You ask. If we asked, you would have said no, she cried. You're so rigid. You don't understand high finance. I understand theft, I said. I turned to walk away. If you walk away, Elaine called out, her voice turning venomous. Martin will tell everyone about the breakdown. He'll tell the employers that you're medically unfit. He'll ruin you. Ariana, we made you, and we can break you. I stopped. I didn't turn around. I just stood there for a second, letting the threat wash over me. It didn't sting. It didn't scare me. It just confirmed that I was doing the right thing. I'll see you on Saturday. Mom, I said. Bring the camera. When I got back to Cedar Hollow, Grandpa Hal was waiting in the kitchen. He had a small wooden box on the table. He looked at my face. You saw her. I saw her, I said. They're broke. Grandpa, the house, the cars. It's all leverage. They used my credit to keep the lights on. Grandpa nodded. I suspected. Martin has always lived bigger than his wallet. He pushed the wooden box toward me. I was going to wait until after the ceremony, he said. But I think you need this now. I sat down. What is it? It's from Rose, he said. Your grandmother. He opened the box. Inside was a single, sealed envelope. The paper was yellowed with age. On the front, in handwriting that made my throat tighten looping, elegant script was written for Ariana. When she is ready. She wrote this 2 weeks before she died, Grandpa said. She made me promise to keep it safe. She said, "Don't give it to her while she's still trying to please them. Give it to her when she starts to fight." He looked at me with watery eyes. "You're fighting now, sweetheart." I took the envelope. My hands shook as I broke the seal. The smell of lavender and dust drifted up. "My dearest Ariana, if you are reading this, it means you have finally started to ask the questions I was too cowardly to answer while I was alive. I love your father. He is my son. But I have watched him and Elaine for years, and I have seen how they treat you. They see people as resources. My dear, they see you as a resource. It is not because they do not love you in their own way, but their love is a hungry thing. It takes. I wanted to leave you something that they could not touch. I knew that if I left it in the will, Martin would find a way to manage it for you. He would say you were too young or too emotional. So, I created a small trust. It is not a fortune, but it is enough for a start. Enough for freedom. It is held at Cedar Hollow Trust and Estate Services, under your name alone. The trustee is instructed to release it only to you, in person, with proof of identity. Do not let them make you feel guilty for taking what is yours. You are strong, you are kind, and you are worth more than what you can do for them. Fly, my little bird, love, Grandma Rose." Tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink of her signature. "A trust," I whispered. "She left me a trust." "Cedar Hollow Trust and Estate Services," Grandpa said. "It's the small firm on Main Street. Mr. Abernathy runs it." "Did you know?" I asked. "I knew she did something," Grandpa said, "but I didn't know where. She kept it from me, too. Because she knew Martin could bully me. She protected it by hiding it. We went to see Mr. Abernathy that afternoon. He was a man of 80, wearing a bow tie, and he smiled when he saw me. "I have been waiting for you, Miss Stewart," he said. He pulled a file from a locked cabinet. "Your grandmother deposited $50,000 10 years ago," he said. "With interest, it has grown. It is meant for education, housing, or starting a life. $50,000. To my parents, it was a balloon payment. To me, it was a lifeline. It was a year of rent. It was a new car. It was the ability to vanish. There is one thing," Mr. Abernathy said, frowning as he looked at a document in the back of the file. "About 3 years ago, we received a petition." My stomach tightened. "From who?" "From Martin and Elaine Stewart," he said. "They petitioned to consolidate this trust into the main estate. They claimed you were incapacitated." "Incapacitated?" I asked, my voice rising. "They submitted a letter stating you were suffering from severe mental health struggles and were unable to manage finances," Mr. Abernathy said. "They wanted to be named successor trustees." "Did you do it?" Grandpa asked, his voice shaking with rage. "No, Mr. Abernathy said firmly. "The trust documents your grandmother wrote were ironclad. They required a court order of incompetency. Your parents never provided one. They yelled at me quite a bit, threatened to sue, but they never came back with the judge's order." I sat back in the leather chair. They had tried to have me declared incompetent 3 years ago, while I was working full-time, getting straight A's in night classes, and paying their bills. They had tried to legally erase my agency so they could get their hands on $50,000. "They are monsters," I said. It wasn't a curse. It was a categorization. "They are desperate," Mr. Abernathy said, "and desperate people are dangerous." We went back to Mara's office with the new information. Mara's face went hard when she saw the petition letter Mr. Abernathy had copied for us. "This is the nail in the coffin," Mara said. "Attempted fraud against a trust. False claims of medical incompetency. This proves malice. It proves premeditation." She looked at me. We have enough for the civil suit. We have enough for the police. But we also have enough for the packet. The packet, Grandpa asked. Ariana said she wanted to serve them at graduation. Mara said, we can prepare a formal service packet, the lawsuit, the restraining order, and a formal cease and desist on the power of attorney. We can have a process server there. No, I said. I don't want a stranger to do it. I want to do it. You can't serve your own papers in a lawsuit where you are the plaintiff, Mara corrected gently. But you can hand them a courtesy copy after the process server does the legal part. Okay, I said. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Martin. You are being ungrateful and unstable. If you don't call us by tonight to sign the refinance paperwork, I am going to tell everyone about your little episode. I will tell the school board. I will tell your boss. Don't test me. Ariana. Then a text from Elaine. You are breaking your father's heart. All this attention-seeking drama is too much. Just come home and let us fix this. Attention-seeking. I collapsed because my heart gave out from the stress of supporting them, and they called it attention-seeking. Cruel, I said, staring at the phone. It's not complicated. It's just cruel. I looked at Mara. Draw it up, I said. Everything, the lawsuit for the stolen refund, the fraud regarding the credit lines, the restraining order, and I want a letter included that officially notifies them of the discovery of Grandma's trust and their failed attempt to steal it. That will humiliate them, Mara said. It will become public record. Good, I said. I wasn't doing it for revenge. I told myself that. I was doing it for closure. I was doing it to make sure that the next time they tried to use my name, the world would know who they really were. I'm walking on Saturday, I said. I'm going to wear my cap and gown. I'm going to walk across that stage, and when I come down, I'm going to end this. Grandpa put his hand on my shoulder. I'll be there, he said. Front row this time. And the parents, Mara asked. They'll be there too, I said. They think they're coming for a photo op. They think they're coming to bully me into signing a loan. I smiled, and it felt like the first real smile I had worn in years. It was sharp and cold. They have no idea what's waiting for them. I spent the rest of the night drafting my own statement to go in the packet. Not a legal document, but a personal one. A letter of resignation from the role of the dutiful daughter. I wrote about the missed calls. I wrote about the fake support. I wrote about the money. And I ended it with one sentence. I am not your asset. I sealed it in an envelope. Saturday was coming. The forecast called for sun. But for Elaine and Martin Stewart, a storm was about to break. The Saturday of the makeup ceremony was bright, with a sky so aggressively blue it felt artificial. The air was thick with the scent of cut grass and blooming magnolias, the kind of heavy, humid sweetness that usually made me feel nostalgic. Today, it just made me feel nauseous. I stood in the parking lot of the Port Mason State Student Center, adjusting the collar of my black gown. It was polyester, it was hot, and it was 3 sizes too big because I had lost 10 pounds in the week since my collapse. I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to perform an autopsy. I checked my phone. The family group chat, the one I had muted but not left, was vibrating with manic energy. Aunt Sarah. We are parked. So excited to see the graduate, Elaine. We are at the front near the stage. Got the best spots. Can't wait to squeeze our girl, cousin Mike. Is there food after Elaine? Big brunch at the club. Martin is buying champagne. I stared at the words. Martin is buying champagne. Martin didn't have money for champagne. Martin didn't have money for the gas in his leased Mercedes. But he would put it on a credit card, maybe another one in my name, if he hadn't realized yet that I had frozen them all and play the role of the patriarch until the card was declined. You look ready, a voice said behind me. I turned. Grandpa Hal was standing by his truck. He was wearing his charcoal suit, the same one he had worn to the hospital. But he had a fresh haircut and a new tie, a deep, serious navy blue. He wasn't smiling. He looked like a general surveying a battlefield. I don't feel ready, I admitted, smoothing the front of my gown. I feel like I'm about to throw up. That is adrenaline, Grandpa said. Use it. He walked over to me, carrying 2 envelopes. One was a thick, legal-sized manila envelope, sealed with red tape. The other was a smaller, white envelope, creamy and expensive-looking. He held up the manila one. This is the sword, he said. Then he held up the white one. And this is the shield. What's in the white one? I asked. Not yet, Grandpa said, tucking it into his inside jacket pocket. You get this one when it is over, when the dust settles. He handed me the manila envelope. I felt the weight of it. Inside were the filings Mara Kesley had prepared, the civil complaint for conversion of funds, the fraud report regarding the Pinegate account, the petition to reopen grandmother's probate due to improper notification, and the restraining order. It wasn't just paper, it was a grenade. Mara is here, Grandpa said, nodding toward a black sedan parked 2 rows over. She has the process server with her, a man named Mr. Griggs. He will be standing by the exit ramp of the stage. He has the official copies, but you wanted to do this part yourself. I do, I said. Remember, Grandpa said, putting his hands on my shoulders. No yelling, no crying. You are not the daughter throwing a tantrum. You are the plaintiff serving notice. Just truth, I said. No spectacle. The truth is the spectacle, Grandpa replied. Let's go. The makeup ceremony was smaller than the main graduation. There were maybe 200 students, a mix of people who had been sick, people who had been working, and people like me who had simply broken down under the weight of expectation. We lined up in the hallway of the student union. The mood was subdued. There was no marching band, just a recorded track of pomp and circumstance playing over a crackly speaker system. I found my place in line. Stuart, Ariana. My heart was doing a strange, fluttering dance in my chest. Thump, thump, skip. I touched the bottle of beta blockers in my pocket. A talisman against the panic. You are safe, I told myself. You are the one holding the match. We began to march. The auditorium opened up before us. It was about half full. I scanned the crowd, my eyes adjusting to the stage lights. I saw them instantly. They were in the 4th row, on the aisle. Elaine was wearing a bright yellow dress that screamed for attention. She was holding a massive bouquet of roses wrapped in pink cellophane. Martin was next to her in a suit that looked expensive from a distance, but was fraying at the cuffs if you looked close enough. He was holding a DSLR camera with a long lens, pointing it at the procession. They were smiling. It was a terrifying, synchronized smile. They looked like the perfect parents. They looked like the parents on the brochure for the university. I felt a surge of bile. They were here to document their ownership of my success. They were here to take the photo that would prove to the bank, to the neighbors, and to themselves that everything was fine. Ariana is fine. The family is fine. The credit line is secure. I kept walking. I didn't look at them. I looked straight ahead at the dean standing at the podium. The ceremony moved quickly. Names were called. People walked. There was polite applause. Ariana Stewart. The name rang out. I stepped forward. I remembered the last time, the tunnel vision, the buzzing ears, the floor rushing up to meet me. This time, the floor stayed where it was. I walked across the stage. My legs felt heavy, but strong. I reached the center. The dean, a man I had never met, handed me the diploma cover. He shook my hand. Congratulations, he said. Good luck. I took the diploma. I turned to the audience. I saw the flash of Martin's camera. Pop, pop, pop. I saw Elaine waving the roses, blowing kisses. She was performing for the people sitting around her, making sure they saw her devotion. Look at me. Look at what a good mother I am. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just stood there for a second, looking at them. I let the silence stretch. I let my face remain a mask of absolute, stone-cold neutrality. Then, I walked toward the stairs. The plan was simple. I would walk down the stairs. I would exit the stage right. I would keep walking to the back of the room, but Elaine had her own plan. As soon as my foot touched the bottom step, she was there. She must have sprinted from her seat. She was blocking the aisle. her arms wide open, the roses thrust toward me. "Ariana," she squealed, loud enough for the entire front section to hear. "Oh, baby, you did it." She lunged for me. She wanted the hug. She wanted the climax of the scene she was directing. She wanted the image of the tearful, grateful daughter collapsing into the arms of the supportive mother. I stopped. I took one deliberate step back. Elaine froze. Her arms were still open, hovering in the empty air between us. "Give Mom a hug," she said, her smile straining at the edges. "Everyone is watching, come on." The people in the nearby seats were turning to look. They were smiling, expecting a heartwarming moment. I looked at her. I looked at the desperation in her eyes, the terrifying need to be validated, to be seen as good, even as she was actively destroying me. "Please don't touch me," I said. I didn't shout it. I said it in a conversational volume, but in the quiet lull between names being announced, it carried. The smile fell off Elaine's face like wet plaster. "What?" she whispered. "Please don't touch me," I repeated. "And do not take my picture." Martin had arrived now, puffing slightly from the exertion of squeezing past the other parents. He had the camera raised. "Ariana, stop this," he muttered, his voice low and threatening. "You are making a scene. Smile for your mother." "No," I said. The silence around us grew sharp. The people in the front row stopped clapping for the next graduate. They were watching us. They sensed the wrongness of it. They sensed that this wasn't a graduation jitters moment. It was a demolition. "We are going to the car," Martin hissed, reaching for my arm. "You are coming with us. We have the brunch reserved." "I'm not going to brunch, Martin," I said. "Martin," Elaine gasped. "I am your mother. You call him Dad." "He isn't acting like a father," I said. "He's acting like a collection agency." Martin's face turned a mottled purple. "You ungrateful little, after everything we paid for." "You didn't pay for anything," I said. "You paid with my money." I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Grandpa Hal stepped out from the side of the stage. He walked with a steady, rhythmic gait. Mr. Griggs, the process server, was a few steps behind him, a large man in a gray suit holding a clipboard. Grandpa stopped beside me. He didn't look at Elaine. He looked straight at Martin. "She said no," Grandpa said. "Hal, get out of here," Martin snarled. "This is family business." "It is," Grandpa agreed. "That is why I am here." Grandpa reached into his jacket. He pulled out the manila envelope I had given him earlier, the one I had carried, but handed off to him so I could walk the stage. He held it out to Martin. "Martin Stewart," Grandpa said, his voice projecting clearly. "You are being served." Martin stared at the envelope. He didn't take it. "Take it," Grandpa said, "or Mr. Griggs here will drop it at your feet, and it counts just the same." Martin's hand twitched. He grabbed the envelope, mostly out of reflex. "What is this?" he demanded. "It is a civil complaint," Grandpa said, "for the theft of the student loan refund, for the identity fraud regarding the Pinegate accounts, and a petition to reopen the probate of Rose Stewart due to fraudulent notification addresses." The color drained from Martin's face so fast it looked like a special effect. He went from purple to a sickly, ash gray. "Probate," he whispered. "We found the filing." "Martin," I said, "we know about the rental on Maple Drive. We know you hid the notices." Elaine let out a sound that was half gasp, half shriek. "You can't do this," she cried, looking around wildly at the staring crowd. "She's lying. She's sick. She had a breakdown last week. She doesn't know what she's doing." She turned to the woman sitting in the nearest seat, a stranger. "She's confused," Elaine pleaded, grabbing the woman's shoulder. "My daughter is very unwell. We've been trying to help her." The woman pulled away, looking horrified. "Elaine, stop," I said. Elaine whipped back around to face me. The pleading vanished. In its place was a look of pure, distilled venom. It was the face she wore when the doors were closed, the face I had lived with for 30 years. "You selfish brat," she hissed. "We kept you afloat. We managed everything because you were too stupid to do it yourself. And now you sue us. You sue your own parents." "I'm suing the people who stole my identity," I said. "The fact that you're my parents just makes it a tragedy. It doesn't make it legal." "We will ruin you," Martin threatened, waving the envelope. "I will countersue. I will tell everyone you're incompetent." "Read the papers." "Martin," Grandpa said calmly, "there is a restraining order included. You are not to contact Ariana. You are not to mention her name on social media. And you are definitely not to come within 500 feet of her or her finances." Mr. Griggs stepped forward. "Sir, I am witnessing that you have accepted service. The clock starts now. You have 21 days to respond to the court." Martin looked at the process server, then at the envelope, then at me. He realized, finally, that the family brand wasn't going to save him. The optics were dead. He was standing in a university auditorium, holding evidence of his own crimes, while his daughter looked at him with the eyes of a stranger. "Come on, Elaine," Martin muttered. He turned and started walking up the aisle, head down, pushing past people. Elaine stood there for a second longer. She looked at the roses in her hand, the props for a play that had been canceled. She threw the flowers on the floor at my feet. "I hope you're happy," she spat. "You have no family now." "I have the family I choose," I said. She turned and ran after Martin, her heels clacking unevenly on the carpet. The auditorium was silent. The dean on stage cleared his throat awkwardly. The ceremony resumed. The next name called out into the tension. I looked down at the crushed roses. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The arrhythmia was there, a little skip, a little flutter, but the crushing weight was gone. "Come on," Grandpa said, offering me his arm. "Let's go home." We sat on a bench outside the student center. Under the shade of a massive oak tree, the campus was emptying out. The sun was starting to dip, casting long, golden shadows across the grass. I took off my cap and set it on the bench. My head felt lighter without it. "You did good," Grandpa said. "I didn't cry," I said, surprised. "I thought I would cry." "You cried enough last week," Grandpa said. "Tears are for grief. Today was for business." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the second envelope, the white one. "I told you I would give you this when the dust settled," he said. I took it. It was heavy, made of thick, expensive paper. "What is it?" "Open it," he said. I opened the flap. Inside was a document with a gold seal at the bottom. Cedar Hollow Trust and Estate Services. It was a confirmation of transfer. Transfer of trusteeship confirmed. Beneficiary Ariana Stewart. Current balance $62,415. I stared at the number. 62,000, I whispered. "The market has been good the last few years," Grandpa said with a small smile. "Mr. Abernathy managed it well." There was a second piece of paper behind the official document. It was a note, written on Grandpa's stationery. "Ariana, money is not happiness, but money is a key. It unlocks the door so you can walk out. Rose wanted you to have an education. I want you to have a life. Use this to pay off the debts they put on you. Use it to get a lawyer who will make sure they never touch you again. Use it to buy a house where you are the only one with a key. You get to choose what family means now. Love, Grandpa." I looked up at him. He was watching a squirrel bury a nut near the sidewalk. He looked peaceful. "Grandpa," I said, "this saves me." "You saved yourself," Grandpa said, turning to look at me. "I just drove the truck." I touched the check. I touched the restraining order in the manila folder Mara had given me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't waiting for a phone call to tell me I had done something wrong. I wasn't waiting for permission. "What do you want to do?" Grandpa asked. "We can go to the diner, get some pie." I thought about it. I thought about the brunch my parents were supposed to have, the champagne they couldn't afford, the lies they were probably telling each other right now in the car to justify their villainy. I want to go to Cedar Hollow, I said. I want to sit on the porch, and I want to change my phone number. We can do that, Grandpa said. We stood up. I picked up my diploma. I left the roses where they were on the floor inside, wilting under the exit sign. I walked to the truck with my grandfather. The limp I had developed from the stress was gone. The buzzing in my ears was gone. The sun was setting. But for me, it felt like the first real sunrise of my life. I was Ariana Stewart. I was a graduate. I was a plaintiff. And I was finally completely free. Thank you for listening to When I Collapsed at My Graduation. It's a heavy story, but one that I think reflects a reality many people face, the realization that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you listening from today? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family to save yourself? If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of justice, reclamation, and emotional resilience, please subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. We have new stories coming every week. Share your thoughts in English in the comments below. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, you get to choose what family means.